An event happens, we sign a story, emotions get attached to it, and then they become so big in our head. And how can we go back without dwelling on the past, but how can we go back in the past and rewrite those narratives that we've created and we hang on to?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what we want to talk about today.
Welcome back to our channel. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Janelle. We have bonded as millennial women, as moms, wives, as coaches, and as students of life, all while finding the humor in the chaos. This is us unpacking and externally processing the ever-evolving and growing baggage of life. Join us in the conversation.
Have we mentioned that we've never actually met in real life? We are connected from afar.
Oh, welcome back. Thank you for being here. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Janelle. Welcome back to Connected from Afar, everyone. We are still afar.
We're so far. And I'm just thinking about like the amount of snow. We got a huge dump of snow, and you're probably in like the heat and just lovely sunshine and cactuses and
Yes.
don't know what
Oh my
else
gosh, you
grows
have
out there.
snow. Oh my God, yeah.
We got over a foot of snow last week in 2 days. Yes, it was crazy. Because it
Wild.
feels like we're miles and miles, like just on different earths.
Definitely. Yeah, I was gonna wear shorts today, and then I was like, wear yoga pants. But I have like I won't put anything else on. Like I just have a shirt on, and that's no more layers are needed at this moment.
That'd be nice. Actually, that kind of leads into our topic.
Love it.
An event happened, it snowed, and we attach a story to it that spring will never come. And then we assign these emotions to it, sadness and need for vitamin D, and just it feels glum sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of what we want to talk about today is an event happens, we sign a story, emotions get attached to it, and then they become so big in our head. And how can we go back without dwelling on the past, but how can we go back in the past and rewrite those narratives that we've created and we hang on to?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what we want to talk about today.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is huge because that's something I work with my clients all the time. Like, get out of your motherfucking head.
Yeah.
Like, it's not doing you any favors living up there. And, it's about focusing on like getting in your body and, in those moments. Now, if we're talking about like trying to reprogram or rewire and do, like that's obviously a little bit different. And like you said, I don't know if you said it while we were recording, but we were talking about it where it's just like rewriting the story, right? Like that when you're looking at past circumstances or situations, like that's something you can do to help yourself out is to rewrite the story.
Yeah. Well, and, because a lot of those past stories that we've told, those narratives that we've developed around certain events, they inform how we proceed, how we navigate future events, similar events, or certain triggers or things like that. They become triggers because we've associated something that happened in the past. The event that's now happening in real time, they become automatic responses versus an intentional response. And that can get, sometimes we feel like, oh man, that's not who I am, or I know better than that, or how come I keep coming back to this, or it's just something that's not serving you anymore. And if we go back into those narratives of like, we work a lot with our clients on this, is like going back and revisiting those times. Is that still true? That narrative that we've built. And because, we talked about this last week or a couple of weeks ago, I guess, because there's so much emotional ties and we dramatize these stories that we've been telling ourselves over and over, that we actually, start to lie to ourselves, but it's just snowballed over time into this story that we've told ourselves. And it's overly dramatized and it's highly emotional. And like,
Mm-hmm.
if you really go back to what the event was, you're like, oh, well, it's based on what I know now. Like that was such a
Yes.
drop in a bucket.
Yeah.
But it's just been built and snowballed over time, and it's become a huge part of who I am, and dictates where, like, how I show up. And I don't like that anymore. Let's go
Mm-hmm.
back and rewrite this narrative in
Yeah.
a way based on what I know now, the tools that I have now, so that I can change moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you think of a scenario like that you have gotten yourself into while where this happened with you?
This comes up a lot, actually. I think about this a lot because, well, I think because in coaching we spend a lot of time either with ourselves, with our own coaches, but also I see this through clients. I see myself through clients in certain
Mm-hmm.
circumstances that it just triggers, a memory for me, or a little bit of perspective, or just even I see myself in my client sometime and be like, oh, I do that,
Yeah.
but I know better. You know what I mean? Not know better than my client, but you know what I mean? That's based on what I've learned and over the years, that's not actually true anymore for me. So
Mm-hmm.
why do I still feel like that? So it does, for me, it does spur a lot of self-reflection. Um, Coaching does, because it just, you see yourself in certain circumstances that you can't help it, right?
Yeah.
Um, so you're just a little bit more, you spend a little bit more time in self-awareness, I guess, just
Mm-hmm.
because you're just constantly doing that with your clients. So I wouldn't say there's one particular moment. It's just I'm constantly revisiting these old beliefs or old values or old stories that like have emotional ties to it, and I'm like, oh, that's actually not true anymore. So yeah, there's definitely not one, but there's many,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like I'm in a season of life where I'm looking back with a different lens,
Yeah.
and like feeling like, not that I need to, but I want to like revisit those and just really hash it out so that
Mm-hmm.
I can move forward. Because I mean, I don't know about you, but there's certain things that just keep coming back, like revisiting, even though I know better.
Yeah.
Even though I have new tools and things like that, they're just like in those moments where I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty,
Yeah.
where I'm not feeling my super strong self, that I'll like revert to that. And
Yeah.
you're like, why is that still even there? You know?
Totally. Yeah. What I think about is when I'm revisiting those scenarios, I always make myself out to be the victim,
Mm,
right? Like the story that I'm living in my head is blaming other people and being a victim to the scenario that went on.
yeah,
And the second that I reflect, look back, take accountability for the part and the role that I played is
yeah,
when I'm able to free myself from that thought and that pattern. But it's the victimhood that allows me to continue to be there and feel sorry for myself and, how dare them and poor me and blah, 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 that pattern just keeps revisiting and revisiting. But when you shine light on the area that you played the role in, for me, it has then let that story go because now I'm looking at it from a completely different perspective, right? Like you've said, like now I'm looking at it in a way that you end up having more power because there's no power in being a victim, but there is
yeah,
power in taking accountability. Through that is when it's like, okay, so now when this situation happens, this is a step or something I can look to. I tend to make myself a victim when I feel like I'm taking something personal or like, like whatever the situation is. Yeah, so that's what's coming up for me.
yeah. So as you were saying that, like, yes, absolutely, a lot of them have been through that lens of victimhood, but some of them, it's not even about being a victim. It was just, I wrote that story from the lens of a 7-year-old.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I didn't, that event, I just, from my life experience as like a child,
Yeah.
is, you know, or in the whatever phase of my life, I was feeling vulnerable in, or based on the experience that I've already had. It's like sometimes you don't understand what's going on. So your reflection on that story is from the lens of a uninformed
Mm-hmm.
child. So obviously I've matured and gained so much more knowledge. Not that I know it all, but I can look back at that time, at that event, from the perspective of an adult now, and heal that part of me that, I have better tools, or I see that event for what it actually is versus a scared, and not even just scared, but just uninformed
Yeah.
child.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the knowledge to like completely understand. So I made up my own story. And part of that is imagination, which isn't a
Totally.
bad thing, but that's just like that imagination, that story that was built out of imagination lasted like 30 years, 35 years.
Right.
And that's not actually what happened. So
Mm-hmm.
to go back and look at that event being like, ooh, that part of me that was such like it had built such a story and stored all these emotions of a 7-year-old
Yeah.
are now still living in my body. But now I can look back at it and be like, um, even like if we maybe something so specific is, I remember, um, actually the story sticks in my head because it informed for a long time. I remember bringing home a report card to my mom, and I got I think it was like a D or something. Like for me, that was a really low mark in especially in elementary, in social studies.
Mm-hmm.
To this day, I could care less. Like it's not an area that like sparks my interest, my
Yeah.
passions to talk about history, and like I like stories, but I don't like it from the lens of, you know, I don't know about in the States, but like the lens of the educational system
Right.
of what should be memorized. It wasn't one of my passions. So anyway, the whole point was I brought this report card home, and I was devastated. I was so nervous to show it to my mom. Not that like my sister was a straight A student. It wasn't necessarily voiced, but my sister was my model,
Yeah.
right? That I have to be as good as my sister in all things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like I wasn't. And so like to say that to my mom, be like, oh, I failed. Like to me, that was a huge failure. Anyway, I still remember like where I was. I remember crying. Like I can remember the entire event. And I can even remember my mom just being like, it's okay. Like, just tell me like what happened. How come this, like, what made you get this mark? Like, where was the disconnect? Like, she was really good. There was no shame from her. It was completely internalized.
Mm-hmm.
But from that moment, that was like, I am dumb. I'm
Yeah.
stupid. But that was never, again, that was like my set. I don't know. Maybe I was older than 7, maybe like 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
That was my 9-year-old story based on my 9-year-old experiences and needs of like needing to prove myself, wanting to be like my sister and not succeeding, and wanting to be the perfect child and things like that, perfect student and blah blah blah, all these stories that I was wanting to be. And now I look back on it and I can see it from a parent's perspective,
Yeah.
and see that there was no shame in that. Really doesn't matter if you get a D in freaking like grade 3, grade 4 social studies. Like
Right.
that doesn't make you dumb. It just means you're not interested. And
Mm-hmm.
so looking back on that now, rewriting that narrative even helps me as a mom to
Yeah.
be able to relate to my kids when they come home and they're, maybe don't get the mark that they thought, or they're embarrassed to show me something that they feel like they didn't do as well as they thought they would, or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when I can see them squirm at something where they feel like they might get in trouble for something that, because of what they're internalizing. So yeah, just being able to rewrite it. It's not necessarily a um yeah, I don't know. It's just like you just look at it from a different perspective of, and with new knowledge.
Yeah. And there's totally different, like, so I bringing up like being a victim in those situations. I'm thinking like your adult self, a situation happens, like that's what I'm replaying. As a
Mm,
child, when you don't have that awareness and you just internalize whatever it is, yeah, that's different. Like that's a different story, right? Like you're not a victim to your circumstances at that point, but it was the story that you created that was like, okay, like now at this moment, I'm not enough. And it's crazy at how like we tally that and we create that belief and then we go and live it out. I know I've mentioned having a similar point of believing I wasn't smart. And then being able now as an adult from that belief of being in, second grade and being like, missed opportunity there, missed opportunity because I had a thought that turned into a belief that I
Yeah.
then lived out year after year after year after year because also that kept me safe, right? My whole point was to stay safe so that I never had to feel not smart again. So if I
Yeah.
didn't put myself in situations that wasn't going to be like, hey, look right here, you're dumb, then I wasn't going to have to feel that. And so I could just ignore it and hope it goes
Yeah.
away and stay small, right? Stay small and safe over and over based off of a little tiny belief of I'm not smart.
Yeah. So how would you, as a coach, how would you help your client revisit that?
So, depending on what the situation is, if that, let's say, I mean, even if that were the case, you could do things like, because we're always looking for evidence to prove the beliefs that we're having. So, you can also, something smaller could be looking for proof of the opposite. You actually are smart. Whether the grades were straight A's or not, you passed, you went through high school, you got this certification, or you went to college, or look for proof on the other side of things. And then depending on how big it is, of let's say a trauma or a thought or a belief, I like
Mm,
to go and do like inner child healing, where we go back, we visit our inner child
yeah.
and hold them, hold space, give them a hug, acknowledge them, and then also let them know, like, look how far we've come. Look at with all of this, trauma or belief that we've had, we're living in today's world. We're thriving. We have a business, we're married. We're in a good relationship. Like, I'm making this up, but whatever that is.
Hmm.
And I have found a lot of power with women that I've worked with in going back and doing this inner child healing of just visiting that inner child, hugging, loving on them, giving them that unconditional love that they needed that they may not have received from a parent or, you know, a, a sibling or whoever it was that they needed it from at the time, and reminding them that, like, all of that unconditional love is living inside of them now. So, there's a few different ways I feel like to approach it depending on how big or impactful, I guess, or non impactful, like that belief has played on your life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a tool I use a lot. And I find some people are more open to that more body work
Yeah.
than others are, which is fine. I find another one that's really helpful is to actually write the story like you're like a screenwriter type of thing. So where
Hmm.
you ask the client to think back to the event, and not to reactions and things, but look, if you looking back at it from who you are today,
Yeah.
look back at that event and write a story. And you can use your imagination of, like, how the person felt, or how they, what they did next, how, you know what I mean? Like, so to write that story, rewrite that story from today.
Yeah.
You're looking at this event as an outsider, and you're creating a new story.
Hmm.
And sometimes that helps them, as they see it unfold, some of the underlying their strengths and things like that, that they, like, their subconscious a little bit rewrites that story in a way that they want it to go,
Yeah.
and how they view it now. And so then they can see it, of like, kind of compare the two and be like, whoa, this is how far I've come, or this is actually what happened. They can be
Hmm.
more objective about it, and to see the difference, then it helps them see kind of rewire the emotional story to it as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's there's so many ways to approach it, and I obviously like the
Yeah.
number one thing for any of it is to have awareness that there's a belief that you're hanging on to that is no
Yeah.
longer serving you, but there is a space to have compassion for it because it did serve you. You know, it did
Yes.
keep you safe and it
Yeah.
did what it needed to do for the time that it did until it was like, okay, this is holding me back. And I am now aware of it and it's time to do something because I don't know about you, but once I see something, I can't unsee it. And so it's
Yeah.
like, gotta do so like I gotta do something about it.
Yeah. Well, and I find myself, again, when I'm tired, hungry, and thirsty, or if I'm avoiding something and I recognize these patterns coming in. So I see them and like they make me, I see it coming type of thing.
Hmm.
And to the point where sometimes I don't necessarily make the change right away, but it definitely comes a lot faster
Yeah.
than I would have before. Like I would have just wrote out that emotional tie or that, when I get blue or whatever like that, like I would just completely hide and disassociate type of thing. But more now I can see it happening before it gets to the full extent of it.
Yeah.
And then so I can usually nip it
Yep.
with the tools that I have or whatever. But it's not that those reactions completely go away when you're vulnerable and maybe not at your best. Those reactions will still come up. It's how you manage them, how you react to them, respond to them, I should say, and what you do next. So it's not a perfect, like, I've dealt with it, it's done, it's gone. It's, those emotional ties will come back.
Hmm.
How resilient are you, and what you do with that, those.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a really good thought like 2 seconds ago, but then it went away. So I don't know if it'll come back or not. But yeah, having the awareness. And about how you were saying like it might not all shift at once. You don't just, wad up the paper and throw it away. Like
Yeah.
this work is like lifelong, all of it. So I feel like we go through phases of time or seasons of time where we're working on something specifically and we're gaining tools and working through it little by little to where it's like, okay, it softens. We're not so, needing that or, it softens up throughout the process, which feels like it's gone. And then here comes 2 years later, something comes up that's in that same, realm. And it's like, remember me. And all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, I thought I got rid of that pattern. I thought I moved through that already. But it's like, no, because it really is endless. But you get to a space, like you said, of like identifying this pattern where like I even remember when I went through this process for the first time of like identifying the pattern and trying to shift the behavior. And each time now I know, like each time you're being presented with this is a new opportunity for you to sharpen that tool. Because it's one thing to have the tool, but it's another thing to utilize it, sharpen it, and master it, right? To where you're, like you said, now I can see it coming. It's not even here yet. I can just see it coming. So now I'm going to do the things I need to do so that it doesn't come, right?
Yeah.
And um son of a gun. It went again. Oh my God. But
Well,
yeah, go
okay,
ahead.
continue. Well, like you mentioned something earlier, and I think we should kind of expand on that, is that tool served you in the past.
Mhm.
And, it served you in the past and protected you in
Mhm.
that moment. So this was something that I learned, was that, for me, it was like, I need to get rid of that. Like, I don't need that anymore. And it's like, once you have that in your toolbox, you don't throw away tools. Like,
Yeah.
you just get new tools,
Yep.
right? You don't, because you never know when that one might, maybe in another situation that might serve you. But
Mhm.
I think it's honoring, kind of that, who you were in that moment, that you created this tool
Yeah. And
that to
like
protect yourself,
y-
like that's the strength of creating these tools. Yes, it might not be applicable now, but it's not about throwing away that tool or thinking this is no good anymore. It's just at the bottom of the toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just
Yeah.
adding things on top that are more current, that are more, we just have more knowledge to create better tools. Or sometimes we can take old tools and make them better. We can adapt them
Mm-hmm.
to current circumstances. So that was something I struggled with, is like felt like I needed to get rid of all these things, and like there was almost shame in those,
Mm-hmm.
because that doesn't serve me, and that was a shitty tool. It's like, no, in the moment that was what I needed. That was my best at the time, and to honor that this was my best at the time. But I'm like, I'm so much, it's like, it would be like, the math that you learn in say grade 12, and like everything that you learn in math in grade 12, the basics you learned when you were in grade 1.
Mm-hmm.
The 1 plus 1. How do you think you got to grade 12 math? It's not,
Mm-hmm.
you don't throw away that knowledge, that those tools that you learned in grade 1 or like in previous years. Everything is built.
Yeah.
It just expands and becomes more complicated, and to solve more complicated problems.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that was a huge, I needed to understand that, to get rid of that shame and that, just this feeling of I'm stupid.
Yeah.
That's the best I could do, and now I'm suffering because I'm still using the same tools as like the equations I used in grade 1 were to solve grade 1 problems. I am
Yeah.
now 39 years old. I still need those basics. I need to evolve them to 39-year-old
Mm-hmm.
problems, to
Yeah.
solve 39-year-old problems.
Exactly. And it's like you said, it's honoring it and it's having gratitude for it, because at the time, that was all you knew. And
Yeah.
that's beautiful and that's fine. It did serve you. It did, to the extent of which it didn't. And then you're like, I have a new way of doing this. And so, like, in those inner child healings that I do with clients, we always have gratitude for the tool that we're no longer using, because
Mm-hmm.
that's it exactly. We're no longer using it. Will we ever again? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe we will
Yeah.
never revisit that tool, but we have gratitude for it, because throughout this entire process of evolving, if you can't have gratitude, then you do have shame and you do have
Yeah.
guilt. And then fucking A, we're still having to uncover the shame. And
Yeah.
so it's like it's one more thing. So it's like having gratitude for just knowing what you knew at the time. And then when we learn new things, we get to do things differently. That's evolution of this human process and being, a lifer to learning all of this stuff.
Yeah. And better doesn't necessarily mean different either. It could
Mm-hmm.
just be expanded,
Yeah.
or evolved.
Yep.
You don't have to jump ship
Totally.
every time, right? Like, it's just a
Yep.
matter of taking what you've already used and improving upon it.
Yeah. Yeah, and those tools, like when we're talking about them being sharpened, like think about that too as like a battery. We get that tool at a 0% battery, and every time we're getting the opportunity to use it, we're charging it, which is making that battery fuller and easier, so that, like you said earlier, you can see things coming and like, oh, I actually don't have to go down this road this time.
Yeah.
And sometimes this is kind of funny, this came up earlier for me. Once I learned that tool, sometimes I would play around with it and explore what that old pattern felt like again.
Mm,
You know? And I knew the new tool, I knew what I wanted to do, but I was like, let me just see. And it was like, yep, okay. Like this new tool that I'm sharpening is actually feeling better in my body. That old pattern is it's just not where it's at. So I think it's funny
yeah.
because, again, in the lines of like trying not to always take everything so seriously, I have found it to be a little bit playful in certain situations where I'm just like, let me just explore what that old pattern felt like, and then it's like, oh yeah, this new one feels way better. Okay, yeah, I'm still on the right path, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think you touched on something really important, is like the emotional side of things. We talk I mean, as coaches, we learned this, but the power of include in your visualization, including emotion, emotions in your visualization is feeling what you want to feel in those
Hmm.
moments of like when you visualize what your ideal life was, or making a different decision, what your action plan is, of like feeling how you would feel in that emotion, or in that event, and how that starts to write the story
Hmm.
of what emotions, like, so now you're putting more intention of what emotions you're wanting to tie
Yeah.
to the event. So are you tying anxiety and uncertainty and those kind of things into your visualizations, or are you tying in joy or pride in accomplishing something, or just the positive emotions around it? Because then that you're already planning
Hmm.
the story
Yeah.
versus kind of going on the defense. So like you're trying to live out the positive story or how you want it to go out, but then yet your emotions are like, it holds back the performance.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So maybe we can, I feel like we have definitely touched on this.
Yeah.
I feel like this is such a good topic, and this obviously goes into so many different things. But yeah, how how do you feel about moving on to our mystery question?
Yeah, I think yes. I think
Yeah,
I mean we could beat it to death, but I think the whole point
totally.
is that you can revisit. There's power in revisiting past events
Hmm.
and recreating the narrative around it, the emotions around it. And it does take time to that to be super instilled and automatic. But the more awareness you have around it and the more you do those exercises of recreating those narratives, the stronger your toolbox is, the quicker you'll come to the responses and the outcomes that you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we
So
touched on this in like past episodes too, so I'm just going to be brief with it. But with exploring those beliefs and thoughts that you've had that you've created, also make sure that they're even yours, because we
yeah.
also have the ones we're carrying around that are other people's that we've taken on as our own that actually have nothing to do with us. So really explore all of those thoughts in all ways, right? In those beliefs, especially those hardcore beliefs when you're so like, nail in the coffin. That's what I believe. It's like, double check that. Be curious. Be curious. Is that yours? And is that how you feel now, today? Because it can
Yeah.
change, and allow yourself room for things to change literally on the daily. Because if you're doing this work and evolving, things can move pretty rapidly. And how you felt last week about something might be different than how you feel about it this week.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's like something as simple as watching a reel or
Hmm.
reading it like a chapter in a book, and you're like, holy shit, I look at all of this from a new perspective.
Yeah.
Or I never even thought of that, or this is a new tool or something like that. So yes, to your point, it can be someone just says the right thing to you and it shifts something completely. And so it's
Yeah.
okay to revisit those on the regular. Yeah.
All right. My
Yeah.
mystery question.
Oh god. Okay. I'm ready.
Okay. You have read a ton of books, I know, on this area of self growth. What's your number one that you feel?
Oh, shit, my number one book. Oh, that's a I hate that question. That's like trying to pick my favorite child. That is probably the hardest question you've ever asked me, honestly, because every book was necessary at the time. Do I have to answer that question? Oh my god.
I can
I
answer it if you want.
Yeah. What's your favorite?
Okay. So, same, every book has its moment for me when I'm reading it for sure. But the book that had the biggest impact on me at the time of when I needed it was The Untethered Soul.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it was just teaching me how to become like the observer in my life, and how to communicate, and how to, not live in my head. So yeah, that was by far my favorite at that time, and still to this day I'm like, I am who I am because I've learned those tools.
Yeah, I still can't answer that question.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay.
It, because honestly, sometimes I don't even have to read a whole book sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like the little woo woo here, but I love a little woo woo. Sometimes the universe provides. It's like the things that I need to learn. I can crack open a book in the middle of a book
Mm-hmm.
and read a chapter and be like, sometimes it's a page. It's like,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I needed today.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I think they're just such powerful tools.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be the same as like a fiction novel. Sometimes
Yeah.
I can get things out of a fiction novel. So I can't choose. I love personal development books. I especially like story based. I do like a technical book every once in a while, but I do love a story based like narrative. I think there's so much power in people's stories, whether it's a biography or it's, sometimes it is a technical book, but they insert like, personal narratives in there, and it just helps the understanding. It's that leveraged learning that I just love. So
Yeah.
anyone who's sharing their knowledge and wisdom and insights, just sparks thought, sparks it. It's not, they're not Bibles to me. And I think that's the other reason is like things aren't Bibles to me. They're not the one and done. It's sometimes it's one nugget, sometimes it's like a whole book of nuggets,
Right.
but it's there's power in stories, and so it's just like whether or not you're looking for it. So I don't know. I can't pick.
All
I
right. I won't
do.
make you.
Well,
I won't make you.
yeah. There's a couple. I should name a couple. Is Ego is the Enemy,
Mm-hmm.
a Ryan Holiday book. Think Like a Monk from Jay Shetty was another big one. That was a turning point for me. I'm just looking at my stack of books. The Universe Has Your Back is another one.
Nice.
Gabby Bernstein. Girl, Wash Your Face. That was also like what I needed through early motherhood. Yeah, there's some other ones, like some old ones. I can't even remember the titles. Like, I'm not really great with details, right? So like, I can't always remember the titles, but it's like there was a nugget in there. I can tell you exactly what I read in that book,
Right.
but I can't tell you who wrote it or what the name of the book was.
That I get.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. Does that help? I do want to like. There's some books that I think are great to read, but
No, that's perfect.
and there's a bunch of other ones as well that
we love all the books.
I love all the books. Yes,
we
a
love
good
all
book.
the books.
It
All the
doesn't even
books
have to
have
be
a
the whole
special
book.
place in our heart.
Yes.
Sometimes we like a page, sometimes we like the whole book.
Yeah, you just take what you need.
Yeah.
Just don't treat it as a Bible.
Yep.
Yeah. Be curious, not judgmental. Anyway.
Love it.
Okay. You know what? I think you answered it. I think that's a great way to end, is like this encouragement to be curious and find your own favorite.
Yeah.
And we'd love
your
to know
own
what your
favorite
favorites
book,
are.
your own favorite
Yes.
beliefs, your own favorite thoughts. Find
Mentors,
your own. Be curious.
Yes. Your mentors. And like, actually, I do want to say this. I don't know how much battery you have, but I'm going to say it as fast as I can. My husband, like, I'd be like, oh, you have to read this book, or like, you have to follow this person. And he's like, nope. And I would be like, for a while, I felt like I was going to outgrow him. And that would really worried me. He is a YouTube man. He will learn anything through YouTube. He would find his own mentors, as things like the people that spoke to him. And it usually was through one of his interests. So he's into investing. He's into now he's into triathlons and things like that. So he would that's where he soaks up knowledge. Yeah. And then little by little, I was noticing, oh, he's doing his own personal development. It just looks very different from my own. It's not coming from a book. He doesn't like to read novels or books. And so he just finds his own way of finding his own mentors. It can look different for everyone. So it doesn't have to be books. It can be audiobooks, podcasts. Like, there's just so much knowledge and wisdom out there. It can be reels. If that's enough to spark a thought for you, fantastic.
It can
as long
be
as it's like in pursuit of growth.
The Connected from Afar.
Yes, it can be our podcast. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, whatever tickles your pickle.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, friends. Today it was fantastic. We love you all. Appreciate you. Thank you for coming on and supporting. And like and subscribe. And of course, as always,
please comment. We
comment.
love a good comment.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. Bye.
Love you guys.